Welcome, my name is Rachel. I'm so glad that you're here with us at the Salem online campus. We have an incredible message for you today. Let's join in.
Hey, so we're in our series, More Than a Story, and we have to understand that it's so easy to get caught up in the hustle and bustle. It's so easy to get caught up in the rhythms of the holiday season. It's so easy for us to lose track of things that really matter in this season, of things that really are of significant importance, just because the holiday season's so busy. But the problem is that the nativity scene, the nativity story, it becomes, if we're not conscientious of it, we unconsciously catalog it with just other fairy tale stories that we hear, and we don't mean to diminish it. We don't mean to water it down. But it's human nature that we get so focused on everything that we lose sight of the one thing that really matters. In the absence of information, we insert our assumptions. So out of this entire series, I'm wanting to dismantle our assumptions and our perceptions of what we think the nativity scene and the story of the birth of Jesus really was. If 2022 was when Jesus came and he showed up Middle Tennessee, south of the river in Montgomery County, the nativity scene might look like a barn you would see on 7 Mile Ferry Road. It might look like a barn you would see on right near down by Martha's Chapel. It might seem like fences that line 4813, and it might seem like fences that you see as you're navigating backcountry roads, and even in the summer how they're wrapped with honeysuckle, and if your windows are down, you catch the smell of the environment around you, and this would be the scene possibly. Maybe we just have to break down application of the story of the birth of Jesus so that it becomes more than a story. Maybe it's okay to make the nativity scene look a little different so it causes us to rethink what had happened. We're going to jump in the story, but maybe... Is anyone else in the room, are you like me? You wish sometimes in the Bible God would give more details? It's like you read stuff and you're like, man, like stories that I just want a little more detail, like Noah's Ark, right? I have to know, how are we being, I'm not just talking about animals like playing nice with one another, but Noah and your family, how are you handling the smell of the ark for all that time? Can we just be real for a second? Like God, did you just have like heavenly, is it like Disney, or like they just pump smells into, the environment? Is that what the ark was like? Just heavenly scent, just pumped in, like, I don't know. Like, I wish I had more detail about, like, when Abraham is going to sacrifice his only son, and Isaac, the son, is carrying the wood for the fire that he's about to be sacrificed on, and we know, he asked the question, hey, Dad, where's the sacrifice for the wood, where's the sacrifice coming from? And Abraham, holding the knife, looking at his son, holding the wood, is like, God will provide. I want to know the details of what that conversation was like coming off the mountain. That's what I want to know. I want to know the details of what that conversation was like with Sarah when they got home and Isaac's like, Mom, you are not going to believe this. Like, what is that? How did that conversation roll out? What does that silent treatment sound like? I want to look at a story in the book of Luke that I think if we really look at it, it's similar. It's like, I want to know the details of how this really played out. It's conjecture. I can't prove that people were upset unless the Bible says they were upset. I can't prove that people were afraid unless the Bible says they were afraid. But we can insert context clues and give humanity's understanding that there's probably a conversation at best that happens out of some of these scenarios. Let's look at Luke. It's just one scripture that we're going to look at. It's Luke chapter 2, verse 7. And it says, and she gave birth to her firstborn, a son, and she wrapped him in swaddling cloths and laid him laid him in a manger because there was no room for them in the inn. Now, context clues. There is no room for them in the inn. Mary is like uber pregnant. Like, ladies, like you are nothing feels right. You're aggravated. You have like superhuman strength, but you're still like handling the stress of the moment right now, right? Like ladies, husbands, you totally get it. Like everything you do is wrong. The only thing you can do that is right is go buy the pickles and peanut butter that she's craving in the moment at 3 a.m. It's the only thing you, like we get, like we're inserting ideas into this story, but they show up and Joseph has forgotten to hit like accept, yes, confirm, like on his Expedia app on his iPhone, the reservation for the inn. She's hyper pregnant. They've traveled 80 miles, 33 hours. We think by donkey. If you don't know about that, then go back and look a couple weeks ago, right? There is no room in the inn, and she is about to burst. I want to know the details of that conversation between hyper pregnant Mary and Joseph, who is just like he's not even looking at her. He's coming back out from, registration. He's like, what had happened was, like, he's going like, I want to know the details of that. But let's continue with the contextualization of this moment. What was inside the inn that caused it to be so full? What was there that made no room, hear me, not just for Mary, not just for Joseph, what was there that made it so filling that there was no room for Jesus? Oh, some of y'all know where I'm going with this. What had amassed so much? What had been gathered and collected together that there was the availability for the presence of Jesus was found without? Now, think about this. Now, we understand the reason they traveled there, and more than likely that the inn had been filled was because Caesar Augustus had decreed registration and a census. They were counting all the people underneath the umbrella of the Roman Empire. So I get it, that's why the inn was full. But the inn was full of people, and people are full of problems. And if you're here and you're like, I don't have any problems, I need to come talk to you and figure out how you've navigated that point up in your life. Like, people have problems. And similarly, if they are gathered here, it's not just that people are filling the inn, but they are what is filling the inn, what it's full of is fears. What it's full of is anxieties. What it's full of is depression. What it's full of is addictions. What it's full of is perversions. What it's full of is worry. What it's full of is how am I going to get from point A to point B? What it's full of is how am I going to pay my bills? What it's full of is what is the next step in my life? What is it full of? It's full of wondering, God, where are you taking me in this journey? Wasn't it full? It's full of everything that's full of us. Everything that's inside us, that's what's filling the inn. And the problem in this story is that it was so filled, there was no room for Jesus. Humanity is built with an internal drive to connect to deity. We are built with, watch, this is why we try everything This is why we look for things. This is why we go from hobby to hobby, from concept to concept, because there's a void on the inside of us that can be filled with only one thing. But here we go, filling ourselves with everything that doesn't matter. And similarly, in this story, the thing that they need is within reach on the other side of the door, but they are too full of everything that doesn't matter. And I do the same exact thing. I fill myself with busyness so I don't have to deal with the pain. I fill myself with focuses so I don't have to deal with what matters. I fill myself with hopes and dreams, maybe God-given, but when they become the primary target of my affection, that means He has been displaced and He is not the primary thing in my life. I have filled myself with so much that in the end it doesn't really matter. There's no room for Him to come in, and no room for Him to speak, and no room for Him to settle down and dwell. I have filled myself with work. I have filled myself with relationships. I have filled myself with navigating the future. I have filled myself. I have filled myself by numbing myself because I don't want to deal with the pain that I've walked through. I've filled myself with distancing from people because people have hurt me, and so I have filled myself with insulation so I can't be hurt again. I have filled myself with everything and the thing I need is arm's distance away. It's within reach. It's just on the other side. It makes me think about a story in your Bible. We're still in the Gospel of Luke. It makes me think it's the story of the prodigal son. And to paraphrase and give you Nathan, the NIV, Nathan's interpreted version, he goes to his dad, I want the things that are owed me, that I actually will get when you die, but you're still alive, so I want them now, so I am being hyper disrespectful in this moment. I want all of it. And the father lovingly gives it to him. The young boy goes off and squanders everything. It's lavish living, partying, right? Does it all, loses it all. Great famine hits the land, and he finds himself, a Jewish boy, sells himself into a situation where he is feeding herds of swine. Now, there's a whole understanding here because pigs would be unclean, and to a Hebrew boy, it's totally inappropriate. He would then become unclean. Like you just didn't do that. There's a whole message in that, but don't worry about it. But here in Luke, I think is it 15? Is it Luke 15? Luke 15, he comes to his senses. This is King James. I love the poetic nature of the King James. It's terrible to understand these days, but man, it sounds great. And he would fain have filled his belly with the husks that the swine did eat. He's so hungry, he's looking at the food that he's feeding the pigs. You ever been around a pig? Those jokers will eat anything. And he is so hungry, he is assessing the feed that you would give the cows, the feed that you would give the goats. He is looking at, you went to Tractor Supply and you bought the 50-pound bag or whatever it is that you buy for whatever barnyard animals you have. And this joker's looking at it saying, man, I'm so hungry. Whoo, crushed up eggshells look good right now. It said he would fain have filled. It means a desire. Watch, a desire to be filled. Another translation is in an understanding is a desire to be satisfied. We fill ourselves with things because we want to be satisfied. Because if it really hit pay dirt and we were honest with ourselves, there are so many areas of our life that we are unsatisfied in. So what do? We look at things, what? Husks? Another translation says pods. Items that literally have little to no nutritional value. We look to consume them and feed them so we are filled, but they have little to no nutritional value. So while we stifle the urge on the inside to be filled, the boy at the time is dying still. I've eaten, but I'm actually dying. I'm filled. But in reality, I'm still empty because it is not nourishing me. It's not, what we sound like in humanity is Revelation 3, verse 17. You say, I am rich. I have acquired wealth and do not need anything. But God says, but you do not realize that you are wretched, pitiful, poor, blind, and naked. We are so busy filling ourselves with relationships, filling ourselves with hobbies, filling ourselves with addictions, filling ourselves with perversions. I'm rich. I don't need anything. The prodigal. I have satisfied and stifled the hunger pain. But what God looks and says, you are still empty. You are still void. What you really need is not on the inside of you. You're still lacking. Found myself in this posture 2014. I've been in full-time ministry since 2002 somewhere, working at a church, another part of the country, big church, sat over 5,000. I worked my way from being in customer service. Ministry was that large that had a customer service line for the product that the pastor had. I worked my way from there to I was actually in the executive office and I was traveling the world with him. 150 nights a year, we're traveling around the country. From a church mindset, going to that specific Bible college, that was the thing. I've made it to the major leagues, right? I've got there. I have arrived. And I'll be honest with you, I was good at what I did. Everything I touched turned to gold. Total Midas touch. Put me in youth, it explodes. Put me over social media, it explodes. Put me on the worship team, it explodes. Put me whatever I got involved in, just you saw increase, you saw growth, you saw things being rehabilitated, you saw expansion, you saw it was a whirlwind. And the thing here, I was working 7 days a week, averaging 80 hours a week, and I was good at what I did. There was increase. There was fruit produced by my efforts, but the problem is I became so stressed trying to keep up with everything that's going on that I started looking for ways to suppress the stress, to suppress the fear that if I don't perform, it'll look poorly on me, to suppress the worry, to suppress all the pressure. So I did healthy things. I went to the gym. I looked into relationships. I found hobbies. I made myself busy filling myself, but simultaneously letting go of the things that mattered, like my prayer time. Letting go of my personal worship time where I just get lost in the presence of the Lord. Letting go of things like the Word. Why? Because I was good at what I did. That in effectively what I said is, hey God, I've got this, I can handle this. And when I became depleted, I kept filling myself with other things to the point that I get so unhealthy spiritually, emotionally, mentally, physically, that I need to resign in 2014. Totally burned out in ministry. Not like, hey, I need to go get a new job. Like, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I can't handle the pressure. I remember moments where I'm having suicidal ideations of, I don't want to handle this pressure anymore. I'm tired of the fight. I just want to go home. I don't want to hurt myself. I just don't want this. I just want to go home. Not home, Clarksville. Not home, Middle Tennessee. Home like, I'm done with all this. In God's grace, I resigned. Found my way to Chattanooga, Tennessee. I've lived there for about a year. And there was no thought of me ever coming back into ministry. That wasn't a thought. I actually went to Chattanooga because I knew if I came home that there is not a church inside Clarksville that would understand the size and scope of ministry. Why does your pastor need a personal assistant? Why does the church lease a jet? What do you mean you travel 150 nights a year? What do you mean the budget is $48 million? There was no place in Clarksville that would understand. So I went to another city so I could be the fly on the back wall and just be nobody. I'll be nobody the rest of my life. Why? Because I had filled myself with things that didn't matter. And there was no room for Jesus. But in that year, I'm telling you, I fell back in love with the lover of my soul. In that year, I found out that churches are meant to be hospitals for broken people. I found out that in that year, you can come into church and you can have problems and you can have issues and you can still have room on the front row. I found out that in that year, I don't have to be perfect. I don't have to have my life all together. I found out in that year that I can have issues and still have a place in ministry. I wasn't wanting ministry, but I found out there's still room for the prodigals to come home. It's interesting that he's God, yes? So he knows everything. He knows the end from the beginning. So he showed up to a place he knew would have no room for him. But he still came. He showed up to a place that was too busy to invite him in, but he still showed up. He showed up to a place that had made no provision for his presence, and he came anyway. Hey, church, that's the kind of God that loves you unconditionally. That's the kind of God that walks with you even when you don't want to walk with him. That's the kind of God that is there with you as you struggle through temptation, as you struggle through addiction, as you struggle through all the situations. That's the kind of God we serve. I think it's interesting, though, that what we see inside the same verse is the answer for when we are filled. Inside the same verse is the answer for how to be filled with the right thing. Come on, can you give me 4 minutes? Can you give me 4 minutes? What did they do? They laid him, go back to Luke 2, verse 7. She gave birth, firstborn son, wrapped him, swaddled him, and laid him in a manger. She laid him in what? Now it would be stone. We can get all into the details of that. She laid, in the only thing they had available, she laid him in a feeding trough. She put him inside something that animals would find nourishment in and receive and take in. Hear me, Pastor David. Animals would come and they would eat out of the manger. It wasn't a crib, wasn't a bassinet. The animals would come and eat out of the feeding trough. What she did, without even knowing it, was representing when he would say, I am the bread of life. What she did, and she didn't even know it, is that she would operate prophetically out of what he would teach his disciples when he would say, I am bread come down from heaven. And he who consumes me, he who eats my flesh and drinks my blood, they shall never go without. They shall continually be satisfied. And here's what we have as the problem in our life. We are constantly feeding ourselves and filling ourselves with things of no consequence and things that don't matter, that we are spiritually starving, but we've made no room for him. What are you feeding on? What are you consuming? Maybe the reason that there's no room for him is because you're consuming everything that won't satisfy you. Goes all back to the same. Hopes, dreams, finances, fears, worries. We consume all of that. And what happens is we find ourselves so starved for what really matters. We walk around empty of him, but full of everything else that doesn't matter. Hear me, church. Have you been feeding on him? In this season, when it's all about the hustle and bustle, when it's all about, when it's all about don't go at rush hour on Wilma Rudolph because you'll be trapped for years. Right? We put so much effort in process. Hear me? Nope, not me. We put so much effort into everything else. And what we're really doing is we are feeding ourselves on things that don't matter. So that when we come in and we have a worship moment, we're like, I really don't know what to do in this moment because I'm so full, I've not made room for him. I've got so many other angles. I over-prepared too much. But here's what I want to ask you is, what do you need to make room? What needs to move out of the way? In your life, right now. What needs to be moved so you can make more room for him? What is that in your life? It's a rhetorical question. Don't feel like you have to, please don't shout out an answer. What needs to move? What needs to move? Hear me. Here's a better way to say it. What needs to move so that he is the thing of main importance in your life?
So glad you decided to join us today. If you would like to worship with your giving and help Salem Community Church continue to make an impact in our community, you can text the amount you want to give to the number 84321 or on our website at salemcommunity.church. We at Salem are intent on creating community centered on Christ. Can't wait to see you again next week.